Hello, world, and welcome to the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterlin, coming to you from the vacation destination known as Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and this is episode 225. It's New Year's Eve. It's the countdown to the ball dropping to the start of a brand new year, 2026. I am here with a new podcast episode that's a bit of a change from the typical format, as we're going to be looking at the very first Patreon bonus podcast episode that I created and released on my Patreon channel in October 2023 for my subscribers. It will be new content to the vast majority of you and an interesting look at what I do over on Patreon for my subscribers. So let's get it started. Let's dive into episode 225, Patreon bonus podcast episode number 1, as we close out 2025 on the In My Footsteps podcast. Yes, so this is kind of a mix of new content, old content. It's going to be new for most of you. I didn't want to do another mixtape, although it would have been easy and it would have been fun. I've got a lot of great mixtape topics that will be sprinkled in the coming years. But I was trying to think of something else different I could do. Because when it comes to Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, a lot of creators take the time off. And I kind of wanted to, but I kind of didn't also. So I thought it would be fun to do something like sharing my first Patreon podcast. You get a lot of creators that down the line, they will share something that was paying tier exclusive to try to entice new people to come aboard. I do early access videos on Patreon, things that are going to go up on YouTube in a few weeks and you get access to it early. But I wanted this to be different, where this is something that has not been heard by the vast majority of you. The bonus podcasts on Patreon, they are me reading, deciphering, decoding 2 separate blog entries when I did the original Initial Impressions blog in 2010 through 2012-13. There are a lot of things that I can decode and I do throughout the podcasts. There's other things where I look and shake my head at younger me and wonder what the hell I was thinking. It's good for some laughs at my expense. So enough of the setup. Let's get into it. You'll notice right away the podcast intro music. It is another song by DJ Williams. Any podcasts that I do, I use his music. That's just something to keep in mind. You can go to djwilliamsmusic.com and check out all of his stuff. He's got a lot of good holiday-themed music that you can find on YouTube as well. So without further ado, let's get into Patreon bonus podcast episode number 1 from October 2023, here on New Year's Eve, episode 225 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Hello, subscribers. Welcome into the very first subscriber bonus episode. This is exclusive for those that have become subscribers for my podcast, for the In My Footsteps podcast, either through Buzzsprout or through Patreon. I cannot say how much I appreciate the fact that you listening are willing to be subscribers, paid subscribers to my podcast. These subscriber podcasts will be kind of similar to the bonus episodes that I do through the In My Footsteps podcast, in that they will not be as long as a typical podcast episode. And although it deals with content that I don't talk about on the podcast, it's got a similar feel. As you could hear the new intro theme song, same artist, DJ Williams, that does the James River song I use for the main podcast. This song is called The Sound of a Dollar, and it just fit right in with a different sort of vibe. I think of this as sort of like the After Hours podcast. Only VIPs get to hear it, and there will likely be more subscriber-only content coming in the months ahead. But an extra podcast was what I thought would be the perfect way to start this all off. So these podcasts are going to be kind of like an organized fever dream, running commentary on life from 15 years ago in the guise of a blog that I created way back when called Initial Impressions. The Initial Impressions blog was meant to be a sister blog to my main travel blog, which I also entitled In My Footsteps. I use the In My Footsteps name on a lot of stuff. Brand awareness. But the Initial Impressions blog was meant to be sort of behind the scenes of these travel trips, and to some degree they were, but there were also snapshots as to what was going on in my life at the time, random rants that make no sense when I look back at them, odd musings that I thought would be fun to share and try to decipher through the lens of being 15 years older. So the plan is on these subscriber episodes of the podcast to go through and pick apart 2 different blog posts at once and splice in my current commentary over what I wrote back then. I'll try to explain any situations, decipher any inside jokes so that you're not left in the dark as to what the hell I'm talking about. And going forward, this will likely be the format I keep, but that depends on the feedback from you. You are the subscribers. So if you enjoy it, I will stick with it. If you can think of any things to kind of change up, let me know. But without further ado, now that I have done a long-winded explanation of what we're doing here, let's dive into the Initial Impressions pilot blog as we travel to the faraway time of May 20th, 2010, and see what deep genius things I have to share with the world. To begin the pilot blog, I do literally what I just did for you on this podcast. I explain what it is. I got the idea for a blog after a recent trip I had done to the North Shore in Massachusetts. If you've never been to the North Shore, you need to go there. It features a lot of my favorite places. Beautiful towns like Gloucester and Rockport and Ipswich and Marblehead and so many more, but I'm not going to run down the whole map. My travel blog, the In My Footsteps one, was to the point. It tried to be more organized, like an article you would read online through a professional outlet. But I realized on these trips that a lot of funny things happened, weird things. So Initial Impressions was meant to be a journal, basically. In daily life, we all see and experience things that are funny or sad or confusing. We just don't normally write them down. And I was going to do that through the Initial Impressions blog. I claim that there will also be deeper topics that we talk about. We'll see about that. But as I just wrote in that blog, this all starts with that trip to the North Shore in the spring of 2010. So enough explaining of that first blog past me. Let's just get into the actual stuff. The first thing I say is I'm in love with Nahant, Massachusetts. If you've never been to Nahant, it's like a little fist island connected via a strip of sand/causeway right off the town of Lynn. I joke that it's like a vacation within a vacation. You hear me mention on my road trip segments on the main podcast that I like to go off the beaten path with some of the places I go. I visited a spot called Breakheart Reservation in Saugus, and going off the beaten path, I happened upon this young male deer. It's mating season. He was not thrilled to see me. I shot a grainy video back in 2010, not the best quality, and I don't know why standing there with this deer staring at me and snorting, I felt disconnected looking at it through the camera, filming it. He did not charge me. He did not try to mate with me. He ran off. Have any of you had any odd animal encounters like that when hiking or anything like that? I went to the town of Revere, which is the first North Shore town just out of Boston. This is where my Nina was born and lived in 1928. I spent a lot of time on that trip just taking pictures of houses across from Revere Beach, which was where she said she was born, figuring if I took a picture of every building and showed them all to her, she might be like, oh yeah, that's the one. But it was also 80-something years later. I mentioned my love for Kelly's roast beef at Revere Beach. It's every bit as good as the hype, I say back then. I don't know what you think of Kelly's roast beef, but a roast beef sandwich and fries while sitting at Revere Beach, that was the first stop on that North Shore trip, and it sounds pretty all right for almost any day. But here's where the blog takes a fever dream turn. I'm sitting at Revere Beach, eating my Kelly's roast beef, and here comes a guy walking down the beach, no shirt. He had so much white hair on his back, it was like he had a white glow to him. Or he was wearing shoulder pads. I make it sound like it was going to make me sick seeing him go by. I'm sure all of you out there have seen people on the beach that should be forced to wear clothes no matter how hot it is. Keep the shirt on if you've got a giant hairy back, especially a white one that glows in the sun. Does anyone get the driving a long distance suntan on one arm if you get your arm resting on the door as you drive? That was my claim back in this blog entrance. Also, apparently I had gotten a new car in time for this trip, a 2009 Ford Focus. I mentioned I love that car. Boy, future me, you're not gonna like those words a few years after that. During the initial months of doing these travel trips at the beginning of 2010, I had a Jeep Liberty, 4-wheel drive, moonroof, heated leather seats. I loved that Jeep. The problem was gas prices were so high, kind of similar to what they were a couple years ago during the height of COVID. So if you have plans to drive all over New England and do these illustrious travel trips, it's a lot of money to spend on gas. So I had to get rid of my Jeep, and I got this Ford Focus, a blue one. What they don't tell you is that Ford is good at the beginning, but at least in my experience, you get closer to 100,000 miles and everything starts going down. I believe within 2-ish years of writing this blog I'm telling you about, I think that Ford already had troubles. I go on to mention how bad traffic in Boston is, even if it's not rush hour. Because newsflash to anyone that lives in this area, traffic's bad in Boston almost all the time, unless you want to drive through it at 2 a.m. It shows my lack of experience, not driving, but just driving places outside of Cape Cod and my little neck of the woods. Oh wow, surprise, and another newsflash, CVS in Saugus, it looks exactly like every other CVS everywhere else. I don't know why I felt the need to tell everybody that. I also go on to mention that in Saugus they had a Target, and this was before there was Target in the Cape Cod Mall, so I didn't see them all that often, and I got horrible PTSD flashbacks from my days of working at Target in Las Vegas. I'll do a deeper dive into the Target Las Vegas experience on the main podcast at some point. Let's see, there's complaining about mosquitoes and other terrible bugs. I don't know what the terrible bugs entail. Greenhead flies, maybe. But what exactly constitutes a terrible bug? One that flies at you, bites you? I mean, crickets never shut the hell up, but they're not terrible bugs. They just like to chat all the time. Apparently, at this time in the town of Lynn, their attractions High Rock Tower and Stone Tower were not opened yet. I guess that means you couldn't go inside them. But I complain that it's a week before Memorial Day and nobody goes out before then. But apparently when I wrote this blog, it was not a week before Memorial Day. So either I stretched it for sarcasm, or in 2010 I didn't know when days fell. I need to learn the calendar better. Back to Nahant, and they have a spot called the Dunkin' Donuts Cafe, which is right near Nahant Beach. It looks like something off a tropical island. It made me fall in love with Nahant more when even their Dunkin' Donuts is just different and cool and classy looking. At the Saugus Ironworks Museum, there was a family of squirrels living inside a wooden wheel well. What kind of parents are these squirrels? Is that a safe place to raise your kids? Are you getting the fever dream bit of these blogs yet? I'm kind of going in order and it's jumping all over the place. This is what made me want to share these with you. They're just so random, yet there's facts you can use in there. Like going to visit Nahant, how great it is. But then there's random things about squirrels living in the wheel wells, the dude on the beach in Revere, or this next one, that taking timed photos of yourself is hard. My damn camera kept tipping over as I tried to shoot myself in front of High Rock Tower in Lynn. These were the days before I had a tripod, so I likely set this up on a jagged rock and then wondered why the thing kept tipping over. You need flat ground, fool. Apparently, at some point during this trip on the North Shore, I got to see some guy sitting and sucking booze out of a brown paper bag. It doesn't say where or when. It just states the fact that I saw it and that it adds to a stereotype of a drunk. This is where I wish past me had actually gone into more detail for this exact reason. In my car at the time, that Ford Focus, I had the sync system. I don't know if it was like a predecessor to Bluetooth or something similar, but back then I had just an iPod, no iPhone. And I guess the trouble with it was each time it played a song, it would then reshuffle the whole list of songs. So I ended up listening to a lot of the same songs because when it would get shuffled, you had the same odds of hearing that same song repeatedly. But I go on to call my car an idiot just after I mentioned how much I love that car. Now it's an idiot just a few minutes later. Speaking of idiots, I think back then, you're going to hear this a lot on these podcasts. My GPS, I believed, was trying to kill me. I had a Garmin, not one on my phone, but one that was its separate thing. I still have it. I haven't used that thing in forever, probably 10 years. I thought it would be cool to change the GPS from the regular voice to a British lady's voice. And I insisted that this GPS was trying to get me to either drive down one-way streets or drive into the water like Michael Scott on The Office. So the killer GPS is going to be a recurring theme on these podcasts. I brag about seeing the same little girl on a scooter 3 times while I drove around Nahant. Nahant's like 1 square mile, so it's not surprising that I would see the same people. But mentioning that I waved to the same little girl 3 times, you imagine being that kid and telling her parents that? They'd be putting out a bulletin for my car saying this weirdo was waving to their daughter repeatedly, and here I am bragging about it. I was just trying to be friendly. I'm not a kidnapper. At the Lynn Woods, while out on a hike, there were 2 ladies walking their dogs. One was a boxer, and then I wrote the other was just some little brown dog, which I'm sure is a real thing. And at some point, the dogs started fighting with each other. Their leashes got tangled. The ladies were yelling at each other. My reaction was to walk away before I started laughing. I end this pilot blog of initial impressions to tell you that I am sunburned and tired, but fresh and clean. I don't know why I stayed it like that, but I was also watching The Hangover and eating D'Angelo's. Anyone out there know D'Angelo's? If you're from New England, you should. It's a really good sub shop, but they've cut down a lot of their restaurants in the last 10 years. I know most of you that are listening to this are from New England or at least familiar with it. And I think I kind of assume that in the blogs too. But then I checked my numbers for the podcast and locations, and I've got people from all over the country that listen to this show. So I think I need to do a better job describing places that they might not know of if you're not from New England. Wow, that was an auspicious debut of the Initial Impressions blog. But wait, the fever dream really picks up as we go to the second blog now. This is May 26th, 2010. I start off talking about, with all the crazy advances of modern science, would it be too much to ask that they create a hybrid season of spring and summer? Long, sunny days, no humidity, temperatures no higher than 80. According to my weather forecast back then, it was in the mid-90s the last week of May. I still have this same desire for the temperatures to be no higher than 80, low humidity. That's why summer's my 3rd favorite season. Sorry to any of those who like 95 degrees and humidity. That is not my thing. Why do you think I still live on Cape Cod? Here's a dated reference. I went to Quiznos. At Quiznos, there was this adorable woman, 75 years old. I don't know how I knew how old she exactly was, but she was so funny and sweet and very particular about her sandwich. And she made it a point to blow us all kisses and tell us that she loved us before she left. I mean, I guess being over-the-top weird but affectionate is a lot better than if she was throwing chairs at us when she got her sandwich. I say it made my day back then, but also the Baja chicken sub, which was my favorite, that made my day as well. We used to have 2 Quiznos on Cape Cod, the sub shop, if you don't know who they are. When I was on my way back from my big 2,100-mile, 6-day road trip back in 2019, I based my last day around hitting up the closest Quiznos to Cape Cod, which is in a town called Orange, Connecticut, about 3 hours from where I live. What is the deal with the 9/10 cent gas prices? Is this supposed to be a trick to make us think it's cheaper? I'd actually rather the gas be $285 rather than $284 and 9/10. $285, I'd rather it be whatever if it was that price. Does anyone else out there wonder about the 9/10 cent thing with the gas? Like, is it a trick? Sort of like the 99-cent thing with other, department stores. Something's $4.99. Well, it's actually over $5 with tax, but you think it's cheaper. Back then, I thought I was part vampire, or at least part cannibal, with the amount of times I bit the inside of my mouth and my tongue. Am I the only one who does this? I mean, it wasn't like I chose to do it. It must be just the way my teeth and my jaw, just the way it's all lined up. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of you out there bite your tongue and bite your cheeks a lot. The most egregious / funny of the times I did this was way, way back, probably 2004. I went to the gym with my girlfriend at the time, and I was lifting. I had gum. I chew gum. It helps me focus at the gym. And I bit the inside of my mouth so bad that when she came over to me, I had blood coming out of my mouth, which is, good Lord. And I didn't have a fun story. I couldn't say I got in a fight with someone. It was, I bit the inside of my mouth. Oh, God. There's a complaint in this blog about the dreaded shacks that you have to pay at to get into the beaches. I had the brilliant idea, and I mean it for real, that if you're local, you should get in free as compensation for the visitors that come and completely annoy us. Not all of them, but some. I know that beach stickers for locals are a better deal, but you know what the best deal is? Free access to the beach if you're a local. Here's something I still can relate to this day, that I find it sort of amusing that these big meathead guys at the gym can lift 300 plus pounds, but can't lift up a 2-ounce spray bottle to clean off their equipment. I'm more impressed with these guys that actually clean up after themselves than the ones that can bench press the whole gym. I worked at regular gyms for years, and I remember having to tell some of these guys to please clean their equipment, and the majority of them have 1 or 2 working brain cells, so they just don't comprehend it. But then again, I currently spend a lot of time at a Planet Fitness gym, and the people there don't really care about anything like that. I am always under the assumption that this equipment at the gym has never been cleaned, so I have to clean it before and after. Now we move on to another subject that you're going to hear a lot of on these initial impressions blogs. I wonder what percentage of girls date these loser tool guys for the challenge of trying to fix them. Apparently I had a female friend back then who says that girls do that. The funny thing is, going back to my 2010 brain, I know exactly who I was talking about as far as the loser tool guy and the girl that was trying to fix him. So as I've been scanning these blogs and looking to share this stuff with you, my brain goes back to then. I know exactly who it was. I don't know if I thought she was going to read this blog and somehow have this epiphany, like, oh my God, I shouldn't keep trying to fix this guy. He's right. He is a loser. Now, granted, she did eventually end up dumping this guy because he is a loser, and she's got a good life now, so maybe I did help out. What happens when there are too many people trying to be chiefs and not enough trying to be Indians? I'm assuming this quote has something to do with the restaurant I was working at then, because it certainly is not any sort of a play that I was in that was real parts that people were looking to play. I believe back then the restaurant I was working at had just undergone a management change. So I'm thinking that anyone that had any sort of sniff of power thought they had to kind of exert that power. And you get a lot of mixed messages, some from people that you don't respect. A quick aside on that, when they did the management change, they changed the whole restaurant where I was working at. The new owner kept on, I think, 5 of us from the kitchen staff. And we had all worked together for 10 plus years. So we were a well-oiled machine that all got along. And then they brought in this new executive chef who had to try and come in and be the boss when there's 5 of us that have 10 plus years of working together. And that new executive chef, he was a nice guy, but good God, there was nobody that was going to be able to corral all of us. I finish off this initial impressions blog by saying that I would rather be shot down than ignored. How about you? I don't know who that's in reference to. I don't know if it's online dating. In 2010, I don't know how big that was. But like I said, it's a fever dream and a running commentary. And some of these I remember what I was talking about, who I was talking about. Others I have no clue. The majority of these blogs, I end with quotes of the day, songs of the day, I guess that kind of sum everything up. I mentioned the song of the day is As by Stevie Wonder, which is an excellent song. If you don't know it, go listen to it. And the quote of the day is, I would rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I am not. And I've said versions of that quote on the main podcast a lot about being true to yourself and succeeding as yourself or failing as yourself. But that quote is from Kurt Cobain, and I've used it a lot over the last 25 plus years. But that just about wraps up the first ever subscriber-only podcast. They're all going to be about this length, 25 minutes, and just one hit after another. Not so long that you're like, oh God, this guy never shuts up. I'd rather leave you wanting more than have you stop it in the middle. I will likely do one of these a month, and I'm going to try to supplement it with other things subscriber only. I don't know if it's merch, if it's digital stuff, photography. I may do polls where you can kind of give your opinion on future podcast ideas. And I would love Q&As just for subscribers or asking questions I can then use on the main podcast. It's a work in progress, obviously. Those of you that are subscribers, you are obviously big fans of my show, and I appreciate you so much. So let me know what you think of this format. If you want me to stop and dive deeper into each thing in these blogs, because there's a lot of foolishness, as you could tell from those 2 blog posts. Not much actual travel tips, more in the way of just this weird stream of consciousness. And it's definitely fun to try to decipher it for you, or give you a look back, like with the Ford Focus, being the narrator, saying, oh, he had no idea that Ford was going to end up being a pain in the ass. But thank you so much for being a subscriber. I hope you enjoyed this very first subscriber-only podcast. And who knows, if I end up with a lot of subscribers, if people clamor for it, maybe I'll do 2 a month. But I've also got the main show to do. Shoot me a message and let me know what you like the most out of all of my craziness on this month's bonus episode. I would normally sign off with who I am and who the show is, but you're subscribers, so you all already know that. Thank you so much again. This has been the Subscriber Bonus Podcast, and I'll see you all on the main show. But until next week, until next year, that'll wrap up episode 225 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for making this your weekly dose of Gen X nostalgia. I hope you enjoyed the Patreon bonus podcast episode. You can get access to all of those for $5 a month. I believe I'm up to 25 over there now. They're all the same kind of format. Special shout out to my Patreon subscribers, Lori, Mary Lou, Ashley, Kevin, Leo, Marguerite, Neglectoid, Crystal, Matt, Dr. Shrimp Porto Chico. I hope you enjoyed this content, even if you've already heard it. Next week, we will be back. We will be back for the first episode of 2026. It is episode 226. It's going to include fitness fad fails of the 1990s. We're going to look at 1996, the year in music, part 1. And then we're off to the races for 2026. I hope if you make any New Year's resolutions, you have not already given up on them by the time you hear this podcast. They're always some sort of shade of the same thing. Save more money, eat healthy, lose weight, make time for friends. Let me know if you have any crazy New Year's resolutions. Eat the state bird from all 50 states of the U.S. Ours is the chickadee. They'd be pretty easy. They'd be like chicken nuggets. If you enjoy my content, you can find me all over social media, subscribe to my YouTube channel, check out the Initial Impressions 2.0 blog. I have 10 books for sale. Visit my website, ChristopherSetterland.com. I put all of this important stuff in the podcast notes. So you can literally click there. There's links to books, to different videos or movies or other friends' businesses. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you again for a great 2025. Here's to a hopefully even better 2026. There's a lot of stuff coming up just in my professional life that you will hear all about on the podcast as it happens. But until then, let's finish off strong. And remember, in this life, don't walk in anyone else's footsteps. Create your own path and enjoy every moment you can on this journey we call life, because you never know what tomorrow brings. This has been the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterlin, but you already knew that. I'll talk to you all again soon.